Hey guys, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here. And today I'm asking the question, do corporations have any responsibility for human rights? Now, I think this is absolutely fascinating. It's coming from both Business Insider and the Washington Post. And here's what's going on. Google's former head of international relations said he spent the last 2 years pressuring Google to adopt a comprehensive human rights policy as it pushed out into new markets in China. But in April, after 11 years at Google, he was pushed out of the company. This is according to him. And I quote this individual. His name is Ross Lejeunesse. I hope I am pronouncing that correctly, Ross. If you see this, I apologize if I didn't. And he said, and I quote, "I didn't change, Google changed." And this is what he told to the Washington Post in an interview that was released this morning. Now, according to La Jeunesse, I'm guessing, he was forced out of the company after he requested formal human rights policies while the company was basically making inroads into China with its technology. Now, Google's history with China is actually one of supporting their government. And they don't have the best track record in general. This would be the Chinese government. They don't have the best track record with human rights in that sense. And they have now ramped up one of the most technologically complex surveillance states in history. If you recall, they have surveillance so good that they were, thanks to facial recognition, able to pick out one of their 10 most wanted in a crowd of 60,000 at a concert. They have turned this up to 11. And by virtue of this, Google has been basically hankering to get into China in a major way, and so they created Project Dragonfly. Now, if you're not familiar with this, I have both written and talked about this. This was essentially a search engine that was being developed by Google for China that would allow China to track what people weren't just searching, but also the telemetry on their devices, key identification indicators, and all of that. So basically, if you were tracking or searching for something using Dragonfly in China, China would know everything about you, including your name, your location, and what you were searching on. And this was actually met by a lot of protests internally to Google by their employees, but also Amnesty International came out and opposed this, and Google in 2018 shelved this. Now, La Jeunesse, I hope again pronouncing that correctly, wasn't fired from Google. He said, and the company confirmed this to Business Insider, that he voluntarily left after a reorganization in February that basically eliminated his role in the company. Now, he posted a blog on Medium, and I'd like to quote from this as well because I think it's really telling. And I quote Mr. La Jeunesse, "Each time I recommended a human rights program, senior executives came up with an excuse to say no. As someone who consistently advocated for a human rights-based approach, I was being sidelined from the ongoing conversations on whether to launch Dragonfly. I then realized that the company had never intended to incorporate human rights principles into its business and product decisions." And by virtue of that, Google has responded. And I'd like you to read, I'm going to read you Google's response here. And to quote Google, "We have an unwavering commitment to supporting human rights organizations and efforts. The commitment is unrelated to and unaffected by the reorganization of our policy team, which was widely reported and which impacted many members of the team." This is according to Jen Kaiser, the Google representative, in a statement provided to Business Insider. To continue, "Ross was offered a new position at the exact same level and compensation, which he declined to accept. We wish Ross all the best with his political ambitions. He is currently running for Senate in the state of Maine." So I find this to be absolutely fascinating in the sense that Google, where do they start and stop with human rights? They are a corporation. They are designed to do business with governments. They are that large where they are looking to get government contracts, as well as make inroads into other populations for their search engine, their advertising model, and everything else. And China happens to be the largest population of internet users on the planet by country. So it would make sense they'd want to get in there. But in order to do business with China, you kind of have to follow China's guidelines in this. They want a censored search engine from Google. They already have that with Google.cn, which already censors information that the Chinese government deems inappropriate. Dragonfly turned it up to the next level, but here we are with Google basically wanting to work with what many consider to be a repressive regime or an authoritarian regime or a very deep surveillance state. And so that's the question for today. Where does it begin and end with Google? As a private entity, they technically have the right to work with anybody, providing it is not violating the laws of their home country. So, for example, Google is headquartered in the United States. If they were going to start doing business with like Iran or North Korea, the U.S. government would step in and put a quash on that. But we have, despite our issues with China and this trade war and all these things, we have a ton of business that basically is done in China. I guarantee you, I am surrounded by things in my office here that were made in China, and I think that's something that we have to contend with. We don't really think about these things, and an organization that could possibly enable a government to step up surveillance, to step up authoritarianism that flies in the face of human rights is something that needs to be addressed. So I'm curious to know what you guys think about this. I think it's a topic that we really need to discuss and come to a consensus there. And if you work for Google and you're watching this, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. I'm not necessarily saying Google's in the wrong here, but given the history of all of this, it really throws a lot into question, especially since we've learned about data mining and other things on Google's watch. I think it's an important discussion that we need to have, and I'd love to hear input from Google employees as well, if you're willing to talk to me. And if not, feel free to send me a message privately or just not talk to me, but I'd love to hear your opinions as well. And so that is your news of the day. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well, a Google entity. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, guys.